thank you so much for that introduction. I'm really happy to be here. This is my first time engaging with this group, so this is awesome. So yeah, as Matt mentioned, my name is Lebrec, and I'm going to be talking about this really cool open data tool for accessing ocean data, which is called the CalOOS Data Portal. And so I'm representing CeNCOOS, which is maybe some of you aren't quite familiar with. It's the Central and Northern California Ocean Observing System. And so it's one of 11 regional associations that are throughout the country as part of this federal effort to better monitor the oceans. So it's part of this U.S. Integrated Ocean Observing System, or IOOS. And I'm going to try not to throw too many acronyms at you, but that's one of them. And so in California, there's two different ocean observing systems, the one in Central Northern California that I just mentioned. There's also one in Southern California, this Southern California Coastal Ocean Observing System. So the main kind of mission of CeNCOOS is to translate data into action through the production, curation, and delivery of high-quality ocean information. And that's kind of achieved through this kind of four-step approach. So the first one is we engage with different stakeholders to identify what their needs are in terms of different information products. Then we also invest in observations for actually making observations of the ocean and coast to actually meet those stakeholder needs. And then the third kind of strategy, which is what I'm going to be talking about today, is streamlining access to information through this open data portal, which is this CalOOS Data Portal. And then the last strategy is to provide access to ocean models and other information products that can actually lead to relevant decision-making, management, and policy. Before I dive in, I just wanted to give kind of just to remind ourselves that ocean data is very diverse, and there's a lot of different ways in which we can better understand our oceans. So that includes in situ observations from things like buoys and moorings, research vessels, coastal shore stations, autonomous instruments like gliders and floats. But we also rely on remote sensing from things like satellite and high-frequency radars, which are radar systems that give us information on sea surface currents. And we also use models and forecasts. So here I'm just highlighting this model, West Coast Operational Forecast System. And this other one is the Sea Harm model, the California Harmful Algae Risk Mapping one, which I'll talk about a little bit more later. And so because we have such a wealth of data and information about the oceans that we can rely on to make important decisions, that really requires a robust data management and cyber infrastructure framework. And so we at CeNCOOS work with a company called Axiom Data Science. They're a small company based out of Anchorage, Alaska, and they're really the ones managing all of the back-end infrastructure and that are really used to feed into these data portals. And so Michelle mentioned it a little bit, which is that one of our core principles is making data fair, so findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And because we also recognize that data, it's important to have timely access to data, because data can diminish, the value of data can diminish over time. And it's also important to make sure that access to those data is reliable. And then lastly, making sure that data is accessible to everyone, really for any use, not just for scientists, but also for stakeholders, general public, whoever it might be. And so this figure is kind of a mess and the font is really small, but really kind of the main point here is that data from various sources are coming into our kind of data flow framework. Those data are standardized into kind of consistent data structures, as well as the metadata coinciding with it. And then there's kind of three main components to the data that is then fed into the portal. So that includes the data services. So that's actually like the data itself that's able to power those visualizations, whether you're looking at heat maps or time series. We also, from the metadata, so that's all of the data that gives information about the data itself, that is fed into a catalog search that a user can then use to find and access the data. And then the last step is actually making those data available through different data servers. So things like ERDAP or Threads, I don't know if you guys are familiar with those, but those are different types of data servers depending on the type of data that you're working with, as well as geoservers. So sorry, that was a little bit technical, but I'm gonna now just give a little bit of a kind of an overview of this data portal, and hopefully you guys can use it and give some feedback later on. So the link or the URL to the portal is data.caloos.org, and this is the landing page. When you get to the portal, you can see there's over 1,000 data sets, which is quite overwhelming sometimes if you're not really sure where to start. And so one of the kind of useful tools is being able to search for whatever data set you're looking for. So there's different ways to filter for the types of data that you might want. So that includes filtering if you're only interested in sensor stations or map layers, moving platforms as well. And you can also filter by specific variables. So if you're maybe interested in pH or surface currents or sea surface temperature, you'd be able to filter by those variables. And you can also filter by the affiliation or also the spatial area. So if you're interested in Monterey Bay, you'd be able to access ocean data specifically in Monterey Bay. So as a quick example, sorry, the text is really, really small, but what I've done here is just search for MBARI, the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute, as an affiliate. And here I've been given a list of all the different stations that are that have been deployed by MBARI. And so if I then were to click on one of these stations here, I've selected the M1 mooring, which is located, I don't know if you can see my mouse, but it's located offshore of Monterey Bay. And here I'm accessing real-time information from that mooring. And so it's kind of hard to see, but on these plots here, on the temperature, and on the bottom is salinity. And on the y-axis, you're seeing depth, so from the surface to about 300 meters. And on the x-axis, you're seeing time. So over time, you're able to see profile of temperature and salinity, as well as other variables. And just from this snapshot, we can clearly see that this is going from about December to just last week. And we can see that these higher temperature and low salinity events, that was from all those atmospheric rivers that came in and really, brought warm, fresher water at the surface. And you can see that it mixed down to about 200 meters in some places, which is really cool. So these are just the types of data that you can access. And in addition to that, you can download those data directly in different formats. So CSV files, NetCDF files, and you can also get a direct link to the ERDAP server that's actually serving those data. Oh, sorry. So that was accessing real-time data from like a fixed platform. One other thing that I want to highlight is being able to access data from autonomous or from moving platforms. So in this case, these are autonomous gliders as part of this California Underwater Glider Network that's kind of operated by Scripps Institute of Oceanography down south. And one of the glider lines that's been maintained for many years is this glider line from Monterey Bay offshore. And again, through this portal, you can access real-time data from these gliders. Here I'm showing chlorophyll concentrations for the entire profile, and down here you're seeing this interactive 3D figure of the profile itself with bathymetry as well. And from there you can also download the data directly, which is great. So that was, using the catalog search and finding data if you kind of already know what you're looking for. If you're kind of a new user and you wanted to just explore this portal, you can also interact with it using this map view. And so from the main website, you'd be able to click on this map up here, and this is the default map view, which is a little bit overwhelming when you first open it up, but you can filter it based on a specific variable, the affiliation, the platform type. There's also a find data search tool up here that you can search for a specific layer if you already know what you're looking for. And so here I've just zoomed into the Monterey Bay region, and you can see each of those points are different sensors that have, some of which are no longer collecting real-time information, but you can still access those data. And so in this case, I've clicked on a point here in Moss Landing. This is the Moss Landing shore station, or weather station rather. And here I'm getting some water temperature time series. Once I've clicked on that point, I can also customize the time series range that I want to look at, as well as the binning of those data. And I can also access all the metadata that goes with the data itself. Again, I can download those data and access some real-time data quality. That's really an important thing, especially for real-time information, is what is the quality of those data. So there's some real-time data quality protocols that are kind of that have been put in place here. So this portal has a lot of information, and I'm gonna hopefully not overwhelm you, but I just wanted to highlight a few pretty cool layers that you can explore on the portal and access the data from. And so the first one is the one on the very far side, which is showing kelp canopy area from Landsat imagery. And here what you can do is select a particular area and get a time series. In this case of kelp area, there's also biomass estimates that are taken from these Landsat images. And just here in this quick example, you can see the kelp area drastically declining, especially around 2015, 2016, during the extreme rain heat wave that we got here in the region. So that's a really, I think, powerful data set and pretty cool to be able to access, pretty readily. You can also overlay shapefiles. So here in the second image is showing the California MPA network. So you can map all the different MPAs throughout the state, and you can also click on them, get some information about what kind of MPA it is if you wanted that kind of information. And you can also access, kind of the source data if you were interested in getting these shape files for maybe your own project. And then this last one is it's called the Sea Harm model that I mentioned earlier. So the California Harmful Algae Risk Monitoring model. And what you can see here is that from the map view, you can change the time point over, so you can look at this raster data depending on which time you want to look at the data. And you can also select a specific grid and get a value at a particular point, which is pretty powerful. So that map view, you're probably like super overwhelmed right now and you're like, what the heck? So we also have created some kind of easier digestible products as part of this CalOOS portal, and that's what we call dashboards. So this is an example of one of these dashboards. These are showing harmful algal bloom data, or harmful algae data as part of this CalHab map project. And so from this dashboard, you can select a particular site along the coast and get some time series information about different HAB species, as well as domoic acid concentrations as part of this network. Here's another example of a different dashboard that we developed. This is just zooming in on the Monterey Bay and giving some information on real-time sensors from the region. So say you're a surfer or a sailor or whatever your interest might be in accessing these data, this would be kind of a central spot to get information throughout the bay. So from that map view that I showed earlier, it can be a little bit hard to navigate when there's so many different layers, but this kind of dashboard allows you to access some pretty straightforward data in kind of a more digestible way. So this is another tool that I wanted to just quickly highlight. It's a little bit hard to show as just a PowerPoint slide, but these are what we call data views. And this is really intended for users to visualize and analyze multiple data sets together. So, so far what I've shown is looking at one particular data set and maybe being able to access it. But say you wanted to look at multiple data layers together and answer some kind of scientific question. So what I've done here is I've selected several different buoys from across the state to look at sea surface temperature over time. And so this is from, I think, 2012 to 2019. You can see sea surface temperature changing seasonally. And you can also see that in 2016, which is where that kind of spike is coinciding with seabird carcasses. So in pink is seabird carcasses that have been found on beaches as part of the beachcombers monitoring program. And so this is a quick example of being able to basically visualize multiple layers together to be able to answer something. So this is kind of a cool tool to play around with different data sets. And from there, you can download the data if you wanted to take it a step further for your own analysis. And you can also share, there's a share button up there, which allows you to get a URL specifically for this data view. So if I found something cool that I wanted to share with someone or use it in a curriculum, for instance, you'd be able to do that directly. So we work with a lot of scientists and stakeholders that want us to maybe look at a particular concept or phenomenon that has happened, and that allows us to do that and show it in a more digestible way. So that was a lot of information, but I do want to mention that there's a help button up there which has some pretty good documentation and some interactive guides as well. And we also have this feedback button, which maybe if something isn't working properly, or if you're looking for a data set and you're like, I can't find it anywhere on this catalog, and maybe it's just not working properly, feel free to send us some feedback that goes directly to me and other folks at CeNCOOS, as well as people at Axiom, who are the ones really managing the portal. One other thing that I just wanted to mention is, so we have this CalOOS portal, which is really this statewide kind of one-stop shop for all of the different data from across the state. But we're also working on kind of a secondary, smaller portal focusing on ocean acidification and hypoxia. And this was a need that came directly from stakeholders that we work with to really have a centralized location for all of these different monitoring efforts that are going on throughout the state and throughout the entire West Coast, really, to better understand not just the chemistry, but the biology of ocean acidification and hypoxia. So some of the different stakeholders that we're working with to develop this product include, state managers, as well as industry folks like shellfish growers, fisheries, recreational and commercial fisheries, MPA management, tribal governments, data providers, and researchers. And what you're seeing on the right there is a kind of example of a data product that we can develop for specific stakeholders. So it's called the Humboldt Bay Oyster Dashboard, and it's kind of a digestible format of accessing ocean data that's relevant for a particular group. So in this case, shellfish growers came to us and were like, these are the parameters that we're interested in. Can you make this accessible for us? And so that's an example of what we've done here. So that was kind of a quick and dirty overview of all the different data products that we have. Hopefully I didn't overwhelm you too much, but yeah, happy to take any questions.
Any questions?
I have a
yeah.
request. I don't know if there's time for you to just show us one of those portals and just kind of like a quick.
Yeah, I can totally do that.
Slides, but it would be nice to just receive an action.
Yeah, that sounds good. I didn't know what the internet would be like, and that's why I just had fun.
Okay. While you're pulling that up, Maureen, just kind of curious, it's amazing number of data sets that are accessible via the portal. And I can remember going to, prior to the portal, with the technical portal, the CeNCOOS portal, and then what is, or is there a process for organizations to kind of apply or to submit data to get exposed on the portal?
Yeah, so really the kind of process is for folks generally to go through CeNCOOS directly. So I personally will work a lot with data providers, different PIs throughout the state on getting their data, and everyone's data is different. It comes in different formats. Some of it is really messy and takes a lot of cleaning up for me or other folks to do. So it really is just there's not really an application form. It's really just establishing those connections. And then from there, working with folks at Axiom on how best to visualize the data. I also work a little bit with folks if they wanted to get their data, for instance, on international repositories like OBIS was mentioned earlier. So it's kind of a case-by-case basis, but yeah. Yeah.
Do you know if there's a portal that can be
So I think the question was, is there a data set looking at ocean fjords? Oh, ocean floors. Yep, yeah, we have some bathymetric layers specifically on this portal that you can access. So that's definitely on there. Yeah.
Demo something?
Yeah, so I can.
Let's, I think if we pull it over to the screen, everybody will see it better.
Okay.
There we go. Feel free to, yeah.
Cool.
Great, thanks.
Yeah. See if I can zoom in. So actually, I'll start from the home page. So this is the home page where you'll be taken to when you first open this up. If you click on the search button, but also the catalog button, you'll be taken to that search tool that I mentioned earlier. Here's that bathymetry layer that I think you were interested in. And here are the different kind of filters that you can use. So let's say I was interested in sensor stations. I could click on sensor stations and a bunch of different stations here. This way, I can also add multiple different filters. I could, let's say I was interested in temperature. Surface temperature. That have that variable. I'm going to go back actually. Oops. And it takes a little while to load. And so I'm going to show you guys kind of what I've already showed in my screenshots, which is here I'm accessing different stations that are operated by MBARI. So that's what I'm seeing here, and all the different dots here are the different stations that I could select. Down here, if I wanted to look at that M1 mooring that I mentioned earlier, I could click on that, and that would take me to the station page for that particular site. So now I'm seeing water temperature, salinity, air temperature, all the different variables that are measured at that particular place. And I can also go back in time if I was interested in looking at a slightly longer time series, then I could do it that way. So here you're seeing that kind of contour plot that I showed earlier, looking at profiles over time, which is really powerful. From there, I could download the data directly. It could take me back to the ERDAP server where those data are actually being stored or served rather. And here on the side, I can get some more information about, okay, what is the program that's actually, doing this project. And here again, I could go to the ERDAP page. And then I'll show you guys the map view as well, if it loads properly. And so from here, by default, it's all the different California real-time sensors. And if I zoom in, here I also have these high-frequency radar stations showing up, which I can either hide or have them appear again. So you can have multiple layers on the map view that you can hide or not. And that includes like raster data as well. Like if you wanted to overlay, say a model or satellite imagery, you could do that and toggle it on and off. So here I'm selecting a particular site that I'm interested in. Say this is the Marine Lab intake station. And here I'm seeing this time series. This is going all the way back to 2015 when this station was first deployed, but I could also zoom in into a particular point. I can also change the time bins of the time series here. So If I wanted to look at it, say, on a daily, get kind of higher resolution temporal scale, then I could do it that way. And again, I can download the data directly from here, which is really powerful. If I wanted to learn about station, then I would page where I can find similar to that M1 station that I showed earlier, where you can actually dive into the data a little bit more. I'll just quickly show you guys these dashboards. So this is the California Harmful Algal Bloom Monitoring and Alert Program that runs across the entire state. And so from here, you can select a particular location that you're interested in. Say you were interested in, are there any HAB events happening at the Santa Cruz Wharf? And I can select that site and start to get some information. Looks like the most recent data is a little bit outdated. It's like about a month old now because there hasn't been any monitoring going on, I think. But yeah, so these are the kinds of that you can get, and as well as nutrients. So yeah, I urge you all to play around with this. It does take a little bit of time to understand where everything is, but it really, I think, is worthwhile to learn. Yeah.
Each station, does it give the spirit area that it covers or depth?
So do you mean like a fixed station?
Yeah, your station area with the cover as well as
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. So if you have like say the M1 mooring that I showed earlier, you would be able to access like the exact location of where that mooring is located. So that you could access like the lat and long at that particular point. And again, you can see the profile, the depth profile, which allows you to see the exact depths at which those measurements are taken. And then if you were interested in getting some more information about like, say, the exact types of sensors that are on it and at which depth those are on, then you could access more of that metadata by clicking on the affiliation or the actual source of the data. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I think like, at least for moorings, right, they're really at a particular point and you have sensors that are really in a fixed location. So I guess the coordinates that you see on the map, what resolution that is, yeah, I'm not sure, but you could find the exact location of the mooring for sure. Yeah.
Is there anyone at MBARI incorporating drone data to this?
Yeah, that's actually something we're actively working on, is getting some drone imagery on here. And so there's folks at MBARI that are trying to get images of, say, identifying like a jellyfish, for instance, and being able to add those images directly on here. One of the challenges with that is that those TIFF images are really big, and so that's one of the challenges that we're facing with right now. But that's something that's coming in the future, is being able to like have that as a layer on the map that you could then have other layers with as well. Like say you were interested in, okay, why are there a bunch of jellyfish on this day? What was it really warm that day? What might be going on? So yeah.
Kind of on those lines, just sort of in general, what types of data, because you're posting like a lot of different types of data sets and about different sort of ocean data science, like top realms and topics, like what kinds of data are you posting? Like what are the parameters? Is it more like sea chemistry or oceanography? Is it like marine mammal sighting?
Yeah, so the question was, what kinds of data are we actually hosting on this portal? Is it just chemistry, and really the answer is we don't have any limitations to what specific parameters we are including in the portal. So we have some biological data sets from like programs like PISCO, Reef Check, the Marine Network. I don't know if you guys are familiar with those, but so we have some time series information where you could select a particular point and get some information about the species distribution. So we have biological data sets. We're working on getting some eDNA data on there as well, which is pretty exciting. But we also have, chemical and chemistry information, physics, wind, sea surface currents, and so really any ocean and coastal data that's relevant to stakeholders, we included in there. So, yeah.
Where's the bathymetry data from that you guys are hosting? Is it MBARI?
That's a good question.
Or is it?
Let me try to find it because
We can talk about it later.
Yeah.
I was just curious.
Looks like it's
California.
Yeah. So I don't think that's MBARI, right? So we should get that on there.
Yeah, well, I mean, we share, I work at MBARI as well and produce AUV data a lot, and we share it using other portals.
Oh, okay. We should, yeah. Our offices are pretty close to one another. Yeah. Cool. Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Let's take a short break.